The independent investigation has concluded that Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women, and in doing so violated federal and state law.
It was a culture where you could not say no to the governor. And if you upset him or his senior staff, you would be written off, cast aside, or worse.
I want you to know directly from me that I never touched anyone inappropriately or made inappropriate sexual advances.
Governor Andrew Cuomo tonight, defiant. This is Making the Case. I'm Sharon Reed, in for Yodit Tewolde. Developing tonight out of New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo already under fire for that damning report released today that concluded he groped, kissed, or made inappropriate comments to 11 women. Now, possible criminal charges contemplated. That from the Albany County District Attorney. In February, the first woman to come forward, Lindsay Boylan, said Cuomo had asked her questions about her sex life that she interpreted to be, quote, overtures to a sexual relationship. Days later, former aide Charlotte Bennett said Cuomo engaged in inappropriate gestures, including an unwanted kiss. This led to a number of women sharing similar stories, including an unnamed executive aide who said Cuomo placed his hand under her blouse and touched her breast as she worked with him at the governor's mansion. And today, the governor released a video statement. As we said, he is defiant tonight. He says he didn't do it. He never touched anyone inappropriately. Cuomo's political future, of course, remains uncertain, and President Biden has now weighed in, joining the growing chorus of calls for Cuomo to resign. Also, lawmakers in Albany have already drawn up articles of impeachment. And tonight, we're going to focus on the Attorney General's report, the details in it, and whether those findings could possibly lead to the governor being criminally charged. CK Hoffler is with us tonight. She's the immediate past president of the National Bar Association and a partner in an Atlanta firm focused on complex civil litigation. CK, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I have to tell you, watching Letita James, the Attorney General of New York, go through the report, the findings, some of it was jaw-breaking, if not unexpected. Let's listen to how she, laid out the case.
The governor and his senior team took actions to retaliate against at least one former employee for coming forward with her story, her truth. And Governor Cuomo's administration fostered a toxic workplace that enabled harassment and created a hostile work environment where staffers did not feel comfortable coming forward with complaints about sexual harassment due to a climate of fear and given the power dynamics.
Women also described to us having the governor seek them out, stare intently at them, look them up and down, or gaze at their chest or butt. In sum, the governor routinely interacted with women in ways that focused on their gender, sometimes in explicitly sexualized manner, in ways that women found deeply humiliating and offensive.
Discrimination lawyer there, Ann Clark, who also worked on the report. CK, the New York Attorney General concluded this happened. Governor Cuomo sexually harassed 11 women, but so often, as we know, women who are sexually harassed are not believed. Their legal claims are not upheld. But here they were. She went out of her way to say she believes the women. Does Cuomo have any credible legal basis to dispute the findings at this point?
Well, I think that as someone who's accused of sexual harassment, he always has the ability to dispute the allegations, but I think the evidence is pretty strong. And Letita James, the Attorney General, is very thorough, very diligent, and she has authored a report, she and her team, that has a great deal of detail. They spent a lot of time investigating these allegations, speaking to these women, and she concluded that she believed them. And the toxic, as she said, the toxic work environment really festered or encouraged an environment where women were just sexually harassed on a regular basis and felt very uncomfortable complaining about it, not simply because of the governor's actions, but the team around him that enabled this type of behavior. Those are very serious allegations. So the governor certainly can launch a defense, but I think it's an uphill battle.
Yeah, and let's talk more about what's in the report, the specifics, because she lays out a case, the New York Attorney General, with some very specific language and, of course, detailed allegations. Let's listen again and then talk about the significance of some of the specific language in the report.
Certainly.
The governor and his senior team took actions to retaliate against at least one former employee for coming forward with her story, her truth. Governor Cuomo's administration fostered a toxic workplace that enabled harassment and created a hostile work environment where staffers did not feel comfortable coming forward with complaints about sexual harassment due to a climate of fear and given the power dynamics.
Power dynamics, fear, hostile work environment. That's nothing new to women who've been at it for some time and women who are brand new. But talk about the implications of that, if you will, this retaliation and what is more than, it sounds like, a toxic work environment and how it was fostered and supported, that toxicity.
Well, this is very serious. One of my practice areas is, in fact, employment discrimination. I represent plaintiffs. So when I hear in a context of sexual harassment, a workplace where women feel actual fear and don't want to come forward when they have been sexually harassed, feel that there's no way out, that there's no place to go, that's very serious. When we talk about toxicity and a toxic workplace, that means that it festered and permeated and basically conditioned how people were able to work in that environment. Everything was bad as it related to women when they were victims of sexual harassment. And that environment, there's only a matter of time before it falls apart, and that's what happened. And so we saw initially one woman came forward, then another, and there were 4 women. And I imagine that there could have been more women that came forward, and maybe there was a settlement, or they were humiliated, or they were retaliated against, and they just didn't have the strength or the courage to take it a step further. And you have to remember, we are in the wake of a Me Too movement. We're in the wake of women stepping forward, reporting acts of sexual harassment, even if they know the odds are against them. As you said, Sharon, this is not new if you're a woman and you've been in a workplace. This has been going on for a very long time. But finally, some people are feeling a sense of justice. So to have Letitia James, who is known as a no-nonsense prosecutor, attorney general, first-rate, very diligent, to step forward and say, I believe these women, that is very significant, not just in the state of New York, but in this country as a whole.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and CK, as she chronicles the behavior in the office, the people surrounding the governor, it was designed to box these women in, to isolate these women. What about the rest of Governor Cuomo's playbook? He says he's sorry, something else we've heard before, if the behavior with women was misinterpreted as unwanted flirtation. I mean, that's textbook, no?
Quite frankly, yeah, it is textbook. And quite frankly, Sharon, that's not good enough. It's not good enough to say, well, if I did, then if I can, I'm sorry. That's not good enough. It's not good enough in today's environment.
CK, the intent, does that matter under the law? If he says, listen, I was just being me, I didn't mean any harm, the women mistook it for something else, sorry, but that wasn't my intent. Does his intent matter under the law?
It doesn't really matter for purposes of discrimination. Now, their intent does play a role when we talk about criminal charges. There's a possibility that he's going to be charged criminally. So intent will play a big role there. But for purposes of civil allegations of discrimination, whether he intended to or didn't, the fact that he did it is what is significant, because these women are testifying and they probably have evidence, corroborating evidence, maybe witnesses and others that were privy to this. And somebody, and I imagine that some people who worked around him felt compelled to cover up the conduct of the governor. If it was this widespread, it was not a secret. This was not one isolated case. We have 11 women who have stepped forward. There might be many others waiting in the wings.
From your experience, CK, we should say the Attorney General of New York says she's not making a referral for criminal prosecution. But as we reported the late breaking news tonight, this, hers is a civil investigation, but the Albany DA's is not. And he's come out and said he has opened a criminal investigation here into the findings of the report. Does this have legs? How likely do you think it is that Governor Cuomo will be prosecuted? Again, the conduct, placing his hand on an aide's breast, which, I'm not a lawyer, you are, but does that not constitute at least a misdemeanor in New York?
Well, it does, and I would submit that he has serious problems. When you have an independent agency, as we do here, saying that they are going to pursue criminal charges when there's no referral from the New York Attorney General, I think that's very significant. Because if there were a referral, it would be different. We saw with Donald Trump, who's being investigated in New York, you have the DA's office as well as the Attorney General's office working in tandem, working hand in hand. That's not what you have here. You have one of the independent agencies saying, look, we are going to pursue criminal charges. So I think this is very significant. When you have a touching, that is assault and battery in my book. And I know, and I'm not licensed in New York, don't need to be licensed in New York, but I believe that the governor is going to be facing criminal charges without a question.
When you talk about, and we're almost out of time, just a few seconds, but I have to ask you this. When you talk about this coordinated effort between the agencies, they really are working in concert here. Might Cuomo get a deal? And by that I mean, if he resigns, if he goes, might the criminal investigation go away? Is it being used as leverage, perhaps?
I think it could be used as leverage, but if they find enough probable cause and if there's enough for criminal conduct, and if he's indicted like everyone else, I think it's going to be a problem. But of course, he can always take a deal. I think people want him out of office. They feel his conduct is deplorable and they believe that he needs to go. But the civil claims, including any civil lawsuits that could result, would continue.
Yeah, that's going to be huge against Cuomo, the state of New York. Who knows where that could go. Now, CK, your voice is such an important one, particularly tonight. You're going to stay with us, and next, we're going to hear more from Governor Cuomo himself. He responded to today's report in a video. We're going to listen. We're going to talk about it next on Making the Case. Welcome back to Making the Case. We are talking about today's damning report by the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed 11 women. Joining us again, CK Hoffler, the immediate past president of the National Bar Association and a partner in an Atlanta firm focused on complex civil litigation. And in Brooklyn tonight, Susan Crumiller joins us. Thank you, Susan, for joining us. You had a feminist law firm specializing in employment discrimination law. And so I want to start with you. Susan, in his video statement denying the findings of the Attorney General's report, the governor addresses one of the women directly. He was found to have harassed Charlotte Bennett. Let's listen to what he says.
Charlotte, I want you to know that I am truly and deeply sorry. I brought my personal experience into the workplace, and I shouldn't have done that. I was trying to help. Obviously, I didn't.
So in an interview tonight, Charlotte Bennett called Cuomo's response, quote, absurd. She went on to say accepting responsibility means stepping down. She wants him out. And Susan, I want you to comment on that part of the governor's statement because it was detailed and in many ways it kind of made the skin crawl with the way he approached and talked directly to this victim who the Attorney General says it's quite clear he did these things.
I agree, and I think especially having read the allegations in the report regarding the administration's response to this investigation, it's quite clear that we cannot believe a word Cuomo says. I think his advisors must have suggested that somehow addressing Charlotte directly would appeal to the viewers, appeal to his audience, and make him seem more truthful. The whole issue regarding intent, first of all, I agree with the earlier discussion that it's totally irrelevant, but I think the issue here is that Cuomo has revealed himself to be a bully and someone who enjoys belittling others to make himself feel better about himself. And one quote Lindsay Boylan said in the report is that the sexual harassment was the if he liked you toxicity. For most people, when you're around, you saw the if he hated you toxicity. Sexual harassment is something that offenders enjoy doing because they enjoy creating discomfort and they enjoy creating fear and instilling fear. And the pattern of sexual harassment that Governor Cuomo has engaged in fits in with his general pattern of bullying and belittling others. I don't buy for a second that he was being nice, friendly, affectionate. I don't care for 1 second how many people he hugs and kisses on a regular basis. That's not what this is about. It's not about affection. It's about power. It's about bullying. It's about instilling fear for fun.
Yeah. CK, did he also bully the investigators, if you will? There's some criticism tonight that Cuomo went after them. He says they have unclean hands. He questioned the neutrality of the lawyers leading the probe. June Kim was involved in previous investigations of corruption by people in Cuomo's administration. So is that a valid criticism? Does that taint the investigation?
I don't think it taints the investigation because there's so much evidence. You don't want to have people who are investigating who have unclean hands for certain. And so that is a point. But there's so much, even if you put that aside, there's so much evidence, a mountain of evidence against the governor. And again, he's not guilty until he's proven guilty. So he does, and even if it's in civil claims, he has to be found liable, but it just certainly does appear based on the Attorney General's report, Letita James' report, that he has a significant hill to climb. Whether there were people who were involved in the investigation who were tainted, well, of course, when you are the subject of the investigation, you're going to try to find people who should not have been involved in some form of corruption. But the evidence is overwhelming. 11 women coming forward that work for you. When there's an allegation of fondling someone's breast, the types of allegations are heinous. They really are in the context of sexual harassment. And I'm assuming that he'll have a defense. I'm not convicting him of anything. I'm not prejudging anything. I'm just saying the evidence is very significant. And that will mean a lot, especially in the court of public opinion.
Yeah, and Susan, I wonder, Cuomo, he denied a lot, but did he say too much? Did he cop to too much? Let's play another part of his statement. And here he's describing how he believes his gesture of touching on the face, kissing on the cheek is just commonplace.
I do it with everyone, black and white, young and old, straight and LGBTQ, powerful people, friends, strangers, people who I meet on the street.
And there you see the slick video that he produced, even kissing a former president. He had everybody in there, children, black, white, everybody he referenced. A lot of people, though, believe that the governor might have done what he's accused of, but that this is acceptable behavior for men of his generation, even in the workplace, in politics. It's just how it works. Respond to that, if you will, Susan.
I think it's an alluring theory. And I know I didn't want to believe the allegations at first. I was here in New York City through COVID, and the governor's speeches were very inspiring and helpful to many of us. But this report is a bombshell in how thoroughly it's investigated and how many examples of inappropriate, not just touching, but also comments, pervasive comments. I think one takeaway from this report should be that he did it. I think just the overwhelming volume of witnesses and evidence that the investigators evaluated is conclusive and decisive. But I think the real takeaway from this report is not he did it, but they did it. Because what's shocking is not just Cuomo's actions, but the actions of all those who closed ranks around him, retaliated against the victims, attempted to discredit them, attempted to downplay the allegations, to bury the allegations, and to bury the complaints as they occurred. This was a typical example that we see all the time, where everyone likes to give lip service to how bad sexual harassment is. Cuomo himself made his amendments to the state human rights law a big centerpiece of his purported accomplishments. Or not purported, they were very good amendments and very important. But there's a real cognitive dissonance between the lip service that's given and the actions that transpire. And I think the biggest problem is that he got away with this behavior for so long because he knew that he could, because he had an army around him of lieutenants willing to fight for his right to engage in the behavior that he enjoyed.
Yeah, and the behavior, again, some of the details, jaw-dropping. We're almost out of time, but CK, I want to end with this question to you. Despite the allegations, and again, very detailed here, Black people in the state of New York by a wide margin, they support Andrew Cuomo, even love this governor, and I wonder what you make of that support and how he's drawn on that support, particularly in the first wave of this scandal as the investigation was beginning.
Well, certainly, and I can just say this: we know as a community, we know what it is to be accused of something that we haven't done. We know what it is to have allegations destroy us, whether we've done or not. We know what it is to be victims, whether it's police brutality, sexual harassment, and the like. So when we see someone who's beloved, who we believe has done a lot for the Black community, targeted, not unfairly, but targeted by, as some people perceive, we have a sense of, some people would say, empathy. Because we know all too much in our community how allegations, false allegations, can bring down someone. I do think, however, there's a big distinction with being very affectionate, cuddling people, hugging people, kissing people, and fondling someone's breast. I think we have to call it how we see it. But I do know that in the Black community, many feel that he has been targeted because of measures and things he's done that may have impacted the least of these and helped the least of these in the Black community. So I do understand the loyalty that does exist, but I do also believe that many are, upon seeing this report by one of our own, the Attorney General, Letitia James, who is also part of our community, who is also someone who's part of his administration, if you will. I think that is also compelling, and it's difficult for people to see what's in front of them. But he's not been convicted yet. These are allegations, but they're very serious allegations, and they're mounting allegations, and it's difficult to look the other way. And again, Letitia James has a reputation of calling it the way she sees it, and she said, I believe these women.
Yeah, she's ice cold. I'll tell you that, CK. She's ice cold. And it'll be interesting to see how race, attitude, support for Cuomo may or may not infiltrate both the civil and the criminal process here. But I hope you'll both join us to continue to discuss it. CK Hoffler, Susan Crumiller, thank you both for such an insightful conversation. We appreciate it very much.